Okay, so we're going to start this evening by doing a period of meditation. So if you want to get into your meditation postures, if you've not, it's fine. So I'll just guide us through a short period of the mindfulness of breathing. So if you've not done the mindfulness of breathing before, then don't worry, just do what I say. Alice, would you be able to dim the lights a bit? Come in. Okay, so when you're ready and you close your eyes, just take a few moments to sit and settle down. I'm not trying to do anything clever with our mind. Just see if you can feel how you're feeling. So try not to go into stories about why you're feeling a certain way or labeling how you're feeling. Just tune into your direct experience. So see if you can have a sense of your whole body. Just feel how the day's left you. And you can check in with your posture. So see if you can have your shoulders above your hips and your ears above your shoulders. And just open up the back of the neck gently by gently tucking the chin. And so you can just soften your face muscles. So let your face relax and just rest naturally. See if you can unclench your jaw. Soften the jaw, soften the muscles around the eyes. See if you can let go of any holding on in your shoulders. And then just notice your breath. See if you can trace the sensations of the breath. It comes in from the nostrils, down all the way into the belly, and out again. The mindfulness of breathing. So in the first stage, tuning into the calming sensation of the out-breath. So with each out-breath, just calming the body more, letting the body calm more, and letting the mind rest more. In the second stage, tuning into the subtle, energizing effect of the in-breath. when your mind starts to wander, it's fine. Just bring your awareness back to your body and then back to the breath. And the third stage, following the breath in its entirety. Both the subtle rise in energy with the in-breath and the calming sensation of the out-breath. And in the final stage, refining our awareness to where the breath first enters the body. So see if we can zoom in our awareness to the tip of the nostril. See if we can take an interest in more subtle sensations, the tip of the nostril. And now for the last few moments, just dropping any effort to follow the breath. Just broaden your awareness so it includes your whole body. Start to let in any sounds from inside the room. Okay, good. So this evening, I'm going to sort of revisit. I was here I was here last week as well, and Arthur City and I, for the last couple of weeks, have sort of been looking at this sort of, I don't know, topic area of what it means to be an individual. And last week, Arthur City was going in about thoughts and are our thoughts our own? And so tonight I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to actually look at see if we can take example from a particular individual. And it's someone who had talked about 2 weeks previously. No, 2 weeks ago. Does anyone remember Hataka? Does anyone remember Hataka? Yes, Alice? Yeah? So Hataka was sort of a person from one of the stories of sort of the Buddha's life. He's someone who encounters the Buddha. And I talked about Hataka. Does anyone remember the teaching that Hataka was given? I'll recount the story. So Hataka, the Buddha is wandering, and he comes along to where this disciple of his, Hataka, is staying. And Hataka is practicing with 500 other practitioners, 500 other people. They've created this community, but they're all meditating together, practicing together. And the Buddha is talking to Hataka, and he asks him, "How have you, managed that? It's really wonderful. How have you managed to create this and sustain this thriving community?" And Hataka says, "Well, I've just been practicing what you taught me. So this is not the first time Hataka has met the Buddha. I'm practicing what you taught me." And he taught him these things called the four Sankaravashtus, which are called like the means of unification or means of connection. Does anyone remember any of them? A few people were here, weren't they, from that last one? Does anyone remember any of them?
Generosity.
That's right, yeah, that's one of them. So he sort of goes through these. He says, if I can make a connection through giving, give. If I can make a connection through giving, then I will give. Yeah? So what other ways? He says, if I can make a connection by... So that's the first one, giving.
Compassionate speech.
That's it, loving speech. So if I can make, or affectionate speech, great. If I can make a connection through affectionate speech, then I will do it. Yeah. We're all relying on you. Go on, Alice.
It was exemplification.
Exemplification, yeah. That's the final one. That's the fourth one. If I can make a connection through exemplification, yeah. And the third one? Beneficial activities, right. I think I talked about that as being sort of like inspiration. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, he goes through these, gives these teachings, and then at the end of the sutta, so I think it's actually Hataka, but either the Buddha gives a teaching. He meets someone and gives a teaching, or someone recounts something and the Buddha sort of gives it a seal of approval. So Hataka gives us this teaching, and Buddha says, "Yes, that's right." Hataka leaves, and then the Buddha says to the monks, he's talking to his monks, remember Hataka as being endowed with 8 amazing, astounding qualities. Amazing. Which 8? Hataka of Alavi is endowed with conviction. He is virtuous. He has a sense of conscience. He has a concern for the results of unskillful actions. He is learned. He is generous. He is discerning. He is modest. Remember Hataka of Alavi as being endowed with these 8 amazing, astounding qualities. So what I want to do is, so often these sort of teachings are these very pithy, so that's just, 8 amazing, astounding qualities tonight. So the first one I wanted to go into was a sense of conscience. Yeah, a sense of conscience. So Hataka has a sense of conscience. So what do you think, people, what do you think? What does that bring to mind? Someone having a sense of conscience. And shout out. I don't shout, but
Sort of self-awareness and accountability.
Right, yeah, accountability and self-awareness, yeah. Great, yeah.
So is like doing things not on the basis of the instinct or reactions or anger, or but it's trying to think about, in a conscious way.
Yeah, so acting in a conscious way. Yeah. Rather than acting sort of as a reacting rather than acting. Yeah.
On the basis of anger or
Yeah.
instinct.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks. Yeah. One more.
Conscience always strikes me as having some connotation of knowing right from wrong on an emotional level, rather than a analytical, rather than entirely analytic. It's almost more internalized and thinking through.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to draw out on it, actually. That's great. Sort of a felt sense of right and wrong. And I think that's right. I think what you find, I think people will resonate with that feeling of right and wrong, because actually on some level, we all have that. Where sort of like ethics and morality is actually sort of ingrained. It's not an idea. You don't have to explain to someone why, I don't know, helping an old lady with her shopping is a good thing. It's just, we all just naturally, you know it. It's sort of a natural thing. So having that sense of consciousness, like being in touch with that, isn't it? Something like that. So another translation of the text says, rather than as a sense of conscience, is a sense of moral shame. So shame can be, sounds like quite a strong word, like a moral shame, but I think that's what it's really more pointing to, is that actually in Buddhism, shame is a positive mental state, because it shows you're in touch with what you were talking about there, that natural sense of morality. So when you're in a state of shame, it's like you're in touch with that, because we can kind of be in touch with it and also out of touch with it. You can kind of cover over that natural sense of conscience. So yeah, we're going to do another quick little meditation now. And what I'm going to do is I want to bring to mind, I'm going to ask you to bring to mind something you've done recently, maybe not a massive thing, but that's just been a bit mean or a bit unkind. So bring to mind something you've done which is a bit mean or unkind. Okay, so let's get into our meditation posture. So again, just closing your eyes. And then bring to mind, as vividly as you can, just that thing, just something a bit mean or unkind that you've done. Perhaps you spoke harshly at someone. And lost your patience with someone. And I just want you to see how you feel in your body. So how does that make your body feel? And then how does that make you feel about yourself? So in light of the mean thing that you've done, how does that make you feel about yourself? And then how does it make you feel in relation to the world around you? Okay, so you can come out of meditation again.
Unpleasant.
Any more?
I felt a dissonance,
Dissonance.
like a sound that is offending your ears.
And then What about how it made you feel about yourself?
Conflicted.
Conflicted. Silly. Yeah.
Sort of like I've let myself down.
Yeah. I was just I was thinking in my head, don't you know better than that? Don't you know not to do that? Yeah, and then what about in relation to the world around you?
It's not a very effective way of living, making mistakes.
Hmm?
What I was thinking of. It's not an effective way of living, regardless of how you feel about it, it usually has some blowback on you beyond
Right.
how you feel at the time.
Yeah.
Well, the side effects or to other people's were quite strong.
Yeah.
And
I think it makes me feel like more isolated, like I'm trying to push the world or people away.
Yeah.
Harsh and critical.
Yeah, sort of pushing away. I feel a bit closed in. I feel a bit isolated. Let me see. Withdrawn. Okay. We'll do another meditation. This time, we're going to bring to mind something kind or generous we've done. Maybe we gave our time to help someone out or something like that. Just any small thing that we did. Yeah. So let's go back into our postures. And this time, just bring to mind as vividly as you can something kind or generous that you've done. And feel tune into how it feels in the body. How it makes you feel about yourself. And how it makes you feel in relation to the world around you. Okay. So how did people go on? How did that feel in the body?
Warm and fuzzy.
Warm and fuzzy? This is good.
Energizing. Stronger energy.
Mm.
And then more energetic.
Great. And
Felt grounding.
grounding. Great. Mm. Okay, and then how about how made you feel about yourself?
Like I had a place in the world.
Mm. Mm.
It's happy to see people smiling and help them.
Mm. And then how about how it made you feel in connection to the world at large?
More useful.
More useful, yeah.
Made me feel like if everyone could just give those small acts of kindness, then the whole world would be like a better place, a nice place.
Mm. Mm. Great. Yeah, so hopefully that little practice just sort of tries to sort of just illustrate that. Basically, try to sort of illustrate really the law of karma in a way, that our actions, how we act, has an effect both on the people around us, but also on us. So if we act from a state of sort of, I don't know, short-term self-interest, either like a little bit greedily, or a little bit meanly, like we think being a bit clever but actually be a bit mean or aggressive, then actually if we keep acting like that, then we'll start to feel more and more isolated, and a bit more closed off and tense and heavy. And if we act in the opposite way, if we're more generous and loving and act with more awareness, then you'll start to feel like actually you've kind of got a place in the world and you feel connected and you feel more connection with people. I feel more energized, energetic. So there's sort of pointing out there's there's basically morality is a natural thing, but we need to be more in contact with it, and it's a practice to become more aware of it. It's like also all those little things that we do throughout the day, like I don't know, skip a tube. We don't have a tube in Cambridge. Just skip a tube fare, skip a bus fare, or little things like that we think kind of don't matter. I think everything does sort of register even on a small level. So Hataka is more in touch with this, with this sense of consciousness, this felt sense of consciousness. Okay, so that's the first one, and then the next thing says is a sense of concern for the results of unskillful actions. Or in the other one, I quite like this, has a sense of moral dread. Moral dread, which is a bit strong, but interesting translation. Maybe I'll just say what I guess it's the same thing. It's that sense of concern. It's that sense of concern. But what I wanted to sort of draw out more from this is, I guess, how much the conditions we put ourselves in affect whether we act in either skill. So Buddhism, we wouldn't say good or bad. You'd say skillfully or unskillfully. As in, are you acting out of a more loving, generous state, or a bit more sort of hateful, more self-orientated way? so the conditions that we put ourselves in really affect that. So, for instance, if you spent a week on retreat, or if I spend a week on retreat, when I come back, I don't really, and I try, as a practice, I have a group. A lot of us who have more regular practices have groups where we sort of come together and we might confess things that we feel ashamed of. It sounds a bit heavy, but it's a very positive practice. It's getting to set contact with that sense of conscience. But if I've spent like a week or 10 days on a retreat, I probably there aren't many ways for me to act massively unskillfully. I'm generally in very good positive conditions, cultivating positive mental states. However, if I spend a week in London and I go to a couple of jazz clubs and I play football and I go to the pub after football, I'm suddenly I put myself in conditions where these sort of slight lapses in sort of ethics can come about more. See what I mean? So, and I guess, what did I want to say? That kind of sense, what I like about that sort of sense of moral dread or sort of concern for the negative effects of our actions is often I'm aware of it. So I said, speak personally, but something in me, for example, as my work, I'm a musician, I play music, and something in me isn't really ready to let that go. I kind of have in my head, there's always like the next thing, like, if I play in a West End show, then I'll feel like I can tie that part of my life up and leave it. Or if I play on said stage, or if I play on that, then I can sort of let that go. And I sort of have my eye sort of on that point. It might be with a career. People do, that's sort of like my career, I guess. People have it with career. So as soon as I've earned X amount, then I'll be able to let that go. Or as soon as I get to this level of my career, I'll feel like I've kind of completed something or fulfilled it. And while I've got my eyes on that site of like that performance, I'm all that time up to there, I'm dwelling in conditions, which sort of aren't really set up for me for acting skillfully. Does that make sense? So, if I really want to like headline at Ronnie Scott's jazz club, there's a lot of years of going to Ronnie Scott's jazz club, and it doesn't provide the conditions to sort of act in a more mindful, more loving way. In fact, you sort of fit into what sort of group you are around in. Does that make sense? We can feel that, yes, I can see how if I put myself in good conditions, so if I act more skillfully, if I act in this way, then I will start to feel more fulfilled. I will start to feel more connected. But there's often something that isn't going to let me, we're not quite going to let us just commit to that and put ourselves in the right conditions for that. You sort of think like, I sort of get in my head, like, as soon as I have headlined Ronnie Scott's, then I'll really knuckle down and do my Buddhist practice, something like that. It's like, I really believe in this, but I want to do this. So the condition, we don't often put ourselves into conditions. And I think that fear of actually seeing the effect of our conditions and can help us spur on. I think that's what it means by it's in a sense of that feels that moral, what does he call it? I won't say the dread one. So the results of unskillful actions, he feels the results of those. So he'll put himself in the right conditions. Another part of this, which is important, is the company we keep. So the conditions we're in, the company we keep, which is often a bit I don't know, can feel a bit mean sometimes, because to be sort of discerning about the company you keep. But it's also about sort of, just being aware of it, being aware of the company you keep and what effect that has on our mind. We're talking a lot, I think Arcidi and myself, the last couple of weeks about how much of an effect we sort of mold ourselves to the group we're in, or we change, how we act changes according to the environment we're in or the group of people we're with. And actually, if we, I very much like, in a certain way, I very much like the guys on my football team. But I know that also, if I spent a lot of time with them, I'd probably start acting in a way which I would sort of feel a bit painful with my sense of conscience. It's not the company that's going to bring about a sense of moral rightness or something like that. Okay, so yeah, those are the first two I wanted to go into, those two qualities, a sense of conscience and a sense of the effects of unskillful actions. Okay, so I didn't really want to put them first because they're a bit heavy and it feels a bit of a down start, but it really picks up. The next ones are much more positive. But what we'll do now is we'll just have a go for a little tea break, and then in the second half, it'll be more positive ones rather than moral dread. Got the moral dread out of the way. We'll go to the more positive ones, and also, if there's time, I've got a little story as well. It's a little fairy story, really. So that's to look forward to after some tea. Okay, welcome back. So, yeah, we'll just keep going. So we're going to just keep going with Hataka. Keep going on with Hataka. And Hataka's name, I might have said this last time, but Hataka's name means hand-me-down. Like a hand-me-down, yeah. So that's what Hataka's name means. And there's a story about how he got his name, hand-me-down. And at the end, I promise, I'll tell you this story. But I was just realizing, and Brett was talking to Matthew, actually, I thought we'll end with a nice fairy story, and I just realized it's actually a very horrible story. That's a sort of good ending, but anyway, we'll end with the fairy story, and it's about the stories about how Hataka got his name hand-me-down. But we'll continue. And one of these other amazing, astounding qualities that the Buddha says that Hataka is endowed with is patience. He's virtuous. He's virtuous, and it's quite broad. But what came to mind? I don't know. Did anyone get repeatedly told as a child patience is a virtue? Anyone ever get told that? So I really want that patience is a virtue. Anyway, that's what came to mind when I read that, patience. And there's there's lots of sort of lists in Buddhism, and one of the lists is it's called the paramitas, which are the perfections, and kshanti or patience is one of those. So I wonder if we could think patience. Yeah, I wonder if you could just think about patience, how maybe we can get, have we got enough for pairs? Yeah, we've got enough for pairs. Just quickly, what areas is patience something that you think about cultivating? Or where does it come in your life? In what situations do you need patience? I'll give you another two translations of the word kshanti: patience or tolerance. Patience or tolerance or forbearance. Okay. So why don't you find someone, get into pairs, and just think in what areas, I think that's what it is, what areas of life do we need to rely on our reserves of patience? Yeah. Okay, so what can people offer up any other things that they talked about?
What did you say?
Can you share any of the things that you were talking about?
A patient, I reckon, is a sort of energy that put it back in balance when the situation with friends, work, and partner and things, they put it out of balance. So you can vibrate it in a way that, they calm it down and ground,
Yeah.
which I don't do.
It's one of these things that I say it's in this list of the paramitas, which is called the perfections. It's these things you're just constantly practicing, constantly will be tested further and further and further and further. So I'm sure you do it in some way. Do you know what I mean? Great. Any more?
So Alice said, she said, quite agree with her. She says when you're not control of the situation,
Yeah.
or even worse, when somebody control you,
Right.
COVID, for instance.
Yeah.
That's the
When you're not,
place where you can, you need patience.
Yeah. In a sense of like, sometimes even just an area of like irritation with someone, or it's often with people, isn't it? Where you need patience.
Then from irritation you go to judgment. From judgment you go to anger. From anger you go wherever you want to go.
Any more?
Yeah, we were talking about a process, the patience that you need to have in order to see results in anything that you're striving to achieve.
Yeah, that's really good, isn't it? Yeah. So, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think we're in kind of a world where we kind of start to think that we can have anything that we want, like at the click of a button. It's kind of weird. With a lot of things, we kind of can. I realised there was someone's birthday coming up, and I haven't got their present. I haven't got them a present. I was like, oh my goodness! And I just went online, clicked in, and was there the next day. I was like, wow, that's really weird that I can do that, with a very specific item. But it kind of makes us think that we kind of, I think I was maybe talking about this a couple of weeks ago. We kind of just think that we can get a shortcut to things, and actually things that are of value, like meditation practice or building a Buddhist practice, developing patience, is something that builds over time and time. It's cumulative. We kind of want the 5-minute YouTube video life hack version of it, don't we? It's like, oh, well, if I just watch this video.
I was thinking there's a connection between patience and compassion. So in that example, it's like having compassion for yourself and not racing towards, looking at the goal or, just being comfortable with the journey. So
it's patience with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because also we can get, with those things that we're talking about with conscience and feeling, when you feel that, we were saying, we were reflecting, how did it feel, what we feel about ourselves when we did that exercise and we did that mean thing. I always get like that sort of, like I've let myself down, or, why have you done that? And we do have to be patient with ourselves, because we all do that. We all do it, yeah. No, thanks. That's really good.
When what we spoke about was also touched on patience and compassion,
Mm.
and I think for me it kind of relates to the example you were giving about like having a goal and then everything before that is unsatisfactory. And I think you compared it between having like a life goal and Buddhist practice.
Mm.
But I feel it very strongly for kind of a sense of moralness and skillful action,
Mm.
and can be quite frustrating when you're not there yet, but also you're constantly frustrated by your circumstances.
Right.
But that's just sort of life, and
Mm.
it's kind of maybe having the patience that you will grow, or that you will become more patient.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say something. I went blank. That's good. Yeah. Thanks. That's good. You see, you said something that made me think of something. Hmm?
But then I kept talking.
No. My mind sometimes just goes delete. That's good. No, thanks. Okay, so that was great. What you're saying about compassion as well, how it's linked with compassion, I think, and love. And I think, we teach you the Metabhavana practice. I think that's very much linked to the development of patience, because often it is to do with patience with ourselves or patience with others. I'll just quickly, I'll move on. So I'm going to quickly just say what Bhante Sangharakshita, who's sort of my teacher and the person who founded our tradition, what he says about Kshanti. He says a lot about Kshanti and patience. And but this is a little. I really like this. This is a little, and it's touched on what we've all just said. It means patience, patience with people, patience when things don't go our way. It means tolerance, allowing other people to have their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own beliefs, even their own prejudices. It means love and kindliness. And it also means openness, willingness to take things in, and especially receptivity to higher spiritual truths. So that's what Bhante says about patience, which touched on a lot of what we sort of gathered. It's a lot to do with how we are with other people. But I also like that, and especially receptivity to higher spiritual truths. So one of the other things, which leads us on to one of the other things that the Buddha says that Hataka is one of the another amazing, astounding qualities is he's modest. So he's modest, and I sort of thought of that as modest as receptive, open, in another way, sort of like not coming along thinking that we kind of know everything already. It's really easy to. I think the most sure I've ever been in my Buddhist practice was when I first come along and I'd read 2 books about Buddhism, and I was really sure that I knew what I was talking about. And in fact, I can remember going up to gosh, it's shameful. A friend now called Subhadramati, who's a very experienced order member, and I came along and was like, "Oh, have you read this book?" And she was like, "It was really like crass pseudo spiritual book. I can't remember what it was, and she was very kind of like, "Oh no, I haven't read that one actually." And I was like, "Oh," I was like going to shut. Like, I can't believe, like, why is she leading the class? She hasn't even read this book. So it was like Zen in the art of knitting or something, something like that. Anyways, So I think that we learn something or we know about it by often it's just by finding out information about it. So in Buddhism, you can think of it as one way of thinking about it is developing compassion and developing wisdom. And wisdom, I think is often we substitute it or replace it with just getting knowledge, like getting knowledge about a subject, or sort of learning information, gathering information, remembering information about a subject. Whereas in Buddhist practice, in a one way, it's really like common sense. It's very easy to understand some of the Dharmic text on a face value level. Is in some ways common sense, but it's so hard to practice it and embody it. Traditionally, lifetimes to perfect the practice. We all can have that sense of conscience, a natural sense of conscience, and know it's the benefit of myself and others around me to act in a skillful way. But yet we it's to actually do that all the time, to actually really embody what we've learned is a completely different thing. And I think that's what, with wisdom, it's like you can really embody those teachings and have them play out and have it inform how you live out in the world. So one sort of mental state, one negative mental state, which is quite I think it's a very unpleasant mental state, which is a blocker, I think, to receptivity, is cynicism. Sort of being cynical. I've in the past been very, and now I've got a very sort of cynical bone in my body, and cynicism in a way. When you, I don't know, when I say a cynical comment or something, I kind of feel a bit sort of. I kind of feel like, well, they're all doing that. It's very easy to make sort of seemingly clever comment which belittles something of value and meaning. But in a cynical state of mind, you're effectively saying that actually nothing has any higher value. Nothing's more inherently meaningful than anything else. It's sort of puts it, in my family, sort of cynical jokes are sort of the currency. And it just means any time anything comes up with anything a bit more meaningful, a cynical mental state or comment can just really so cynicism is a very, very, it's quite a horrible mental state to be in, and it comes with a sort of sense of being clever, like, I'm not going to get fooled, I'm not gullible or something, sort of like cleverness, but it's a really unpleasant mental state, and it doesn't lead to finding a way of living which is more valuable and more meaningful. Yeah. So another thing on this another thing I want to say is a bit like I guess in Buddhism you would have, and actually just in life, it would look at there being like a natural spiritual hierarchy in a way, just reverence and looking up and accepting that. So I can look up to Arthur Siddhi because Arthur Siddhi has been practicing for many, many years longer than I have been. And he's, with his practice, has gone deeper and he has more to offer. And he's got a sort of bigger well of practice. And I can ask Arthur Siddhi questions, I come to advice for Arthur Siddhi, I can look up to him and his practice. But I think a bit like we can sort of have come along with you. Another great thing that I did, another embarrassing story about when I came along to the Buddhist Center, out of the embarrassing stories, is that I read about a practice called sadhana practice, which is quite I don't want to say advanced, but it's a practice that order members do. And I read about this, and I went up to an order member, friend, David Mitra. That's one of my friends, and I said, "What's a sadhana?" And he said, "Do you mean sadhana?" And I said, "Yeah." I was like, "What is it?" And he said, "What's the type of meditation practice?" And I said, "Oh, can I do it?" I almost kind of demanding. He said, "No." And I thought, "Why not?" So, "Do you do it?" He said, "Yes." I was like, "Well, why can't I do it?" So, "Because you're not ready to do it yet." I was sort of like a bit like this feeling of like, well, hang on, surely, why can't I just do that one? And, now that I practice sadhana myself, there's no way I'd ever suggest to someone who just come through the door, oh, do this practice. Not because it's sort of advanced in some way, but it would just be misunderstood. And there's sort of a lack of, sort of have to have a sense of, actually, you need to do it level by level, step by step. It's a bit more of a mundane example, but often I teach music in schools, and often you get, depending on the family and the family background, often you get parents buy a book of music which is way out of the capability, Giovanni probably knows because he's a musician, of the student, and it's, do you think they can do this by the summer? And you have to say, well, no, because they could do, but they've got to do all the steps first. And it's sort of an idea that everything's should be on the same level. Sort of like, there's no sense of, actually, we need to start with this thing first because this is where we're at or something. And I think especially in the days of the internet and things, practices, normally you would, I guess traditionally you'd probably come to your teacher and they'd give you the practice which is right for you. You'd go away and practice it. And then when you were ready, they would give you something else to do when you're in the right state. But now it's sort of, we've got this a bit of a view that we should be able to access anything we want, sort of thing. Yeah, and it's sort of like we sort of want. Sometimes you hear sort of like, and what my attitude was, I want the real deal. I want the high teaching. I don't want. I know you teach these practices to the beginners, but I want a real flavor of it. But it's very important to remember. So when I say I don't want to call the sadhana a higher teaching, because in a way there aren't higher practices. Because what deepens is the mind of the person engaging with it. That's what advances in a way. That's what deepens. It's the mind of the person who's engaging with the practice that deepens, not the practice itself. There's one of Sangharakshita's aphorisms is, there's no higher teachings, only deeper understandings. And so I think that's another thing that sort of, I don't know, we come with this sort of, well, I did anyway, and I'm sure I'm not alone, sort of come with that kind of attitude, which stops us being receptive. And I think the last thing to say on that is last thing to say on that is I think a few weeks ago I was talking about having friends who really that we can look up to and have our best interests at heart, sort of good positive friends who have been important in our lives. In this practice, we'd call them Kalyana Mitras. You might call her Kalyana Mitra, and someone who's just got who is further along the path than you and has your best interests at heart. And you can actually have official Kalyana Mitras in our tradition. So you actually have you can have a ritual where you sort of have mark a connection with someone, where they sort of officially become and ritually become your Kalyana Mitra. Before I did, I have two Kalyana Mitras, and before I became that, I asked them about the relationship. I said, well, what does that entail? What does it mean to have that kind of relationship? And the only thing they said was, if I point something out to you, or say something, or tell you something, or try and point something out to you, or tell you to do something, then you'll listen. You'll at least listen to it. So you didn't say I'll do whatever you say, do whatever I say. He said, if I point something out to you, and you'll try and you won't just throw it away. You won't just disregard it. So that's that sort of, I thought that's embodies that quality of modesty that the Buddha said Hataka has, sort of open and receptiveness. Okay. Okay, there's more qualities, but for time's sake, I'm just going to finish on the last one, which was that Hataka is generous. That he is generous. And I wanted to finish with that because it's kind of the start and the end in the spiritual life. Generous. So we were talking about that sense of conscience and trying to act more skillfully regarding others. But sometimes actually you can't do that. Sometimes sometimes you're in such a mental state, a situation that it's like you can't get in touch with that sense of conscience, and you can't act skillfully. But if you can't do that, the Buddha says is you can always give. So even if you feel like you can't act skillfully, you can physically give. You can be generous. It's like getting out of me and going out to someone else. So you can always give. So has anyone heard of the formulation of the threefold path? Has anyone heard of that? Maybe half and half. So there's lots of different, in a way, when you come across Buddhism, what you get is a lot of different models, right? Lots of different ways of looking at your experience, reflecting on your experience. So it's not like teachings and doctrines that you have to believe in. You get these models of which to bring into your awareness and reflect on your experience. And one sort of key formulation is the threefold path, which is ethics, so sort of getting in touch with that morality, meditation, and wisdom. And sort of touched on those things, maybe not so much meditation, but you think about looking more deeply on the mind, awareness of sort of building more awareness. And then wisdom, like how do we actually see that at a deep level where it affects how we are in the world. So ethics or morality, meditation and wisdom. But you can also think of it as a fourfold path, where you can think of it as generosity, ethics, meditation and wisdom. So generosity, being generous, can come first. So in a way, so if like I said, if you can't be ethical, you can still give. And you can also think of it as a sevenfold path. Generosity, ethics, generosity, meditation, generosity, wisdom, and generosity. Because whether you're more generous or if you're giving more is a real indicator of whether your practice is having an effect. Yeah? In a sense, if you're getting really great meditation experiences, but you're not becoming more generous or more other regarding, then in a sense, what's the point, in a way? So he is generous. It's generosity, and if we're becoming more giving, is a real indicator for whether our practice is going deeper. So it's both the start and the end. I might just say, like, I live in a community, and there's 10 of us, and I've lived there for nearly 7 years now. And when one of us goes away, so it might be on a retreat or abroad somewhere or wherever it is, if we go away for a while, like a week or so, when we come back, we all put cards and little gifts in that person's room just saying welcome back. That's a really nice thing to do. And you kind of think that, in a way, it's like, I kind of know it's going to happen. You know what I mean? You kind of think like, it's like, yeah, I've been away, I'll get all the cards. It's like, again, you know, sort of like, it's been doing this for years. But actually, you kind of think, even though I know it's going to happen, it still has a really good effect. It still has such a nice effect that you come back, and it just shows that people have thought about you. And I know what it's like on the other side. Everyone's sending texts around saying, so-and-so's coming back, do cards. Put it in just before they get in. Oh, but, you know, you know, I know what it's like. But it still has an effect. And I think, you know, you don't need to what I'm trying to say, you don't have to second guess acts of generosity. You can sometimes be like, oh, you know, it won't really mean much. But even when you know someone's going to be there, and it's a tiny little thing, it's a card and a small bit of chocolate, it still makes a really big difference. And sometimes we can sort of cancel out our generosity. Okay. All right, so we'll leave Hataka there now. So we've gone over sense of conscience, patience, receptivity, and generosity. And now I think we can hear do we want to hear the story? The fairy story? Okay, sit comfortably. And I'm going to try and remember it. It's quite long. Okay, so this is it's sort of like, yes, it's basically like a fairy story about how Hataka. It's not actually just about how Hataka got his name, but it explains Hataka's name. So I'm telling it for that reason. Why Hataka was called Hand-Me-Down, just for a bit of fun, really. So it starts with, once upon a time, there was this king called Alavaka. There's 3 characters in this story, and they're all called Alavaka. I don't know if that's got some sort of significance. There's King Alavaka, and he's the king of a city called Alavi. And so one day the king is going out with his, ministers or guards, and he's just going out hunting. He's going out deer hunting. And he's chasing this deer, and the deer's getting away. He shoots and he misses, and he has to chases this deer away from all his ministers, and eventually he catches and kills the deer. And he's carrying this deer back, and he has a long way to go. And so he rests under this tree. It's this big banyan tree, and he rests for some shade under this tree. And he's sat there resting, and then down from the tree jumps this ogre. This ogre jumps down from the tree, and this ogre has been given this power, granted this power that, or this right rather, that anything that comes in the shade of this tree is his supper, actually. Anything that comes under this tree is this ogre's supper. And so the ogre that looks at him, this huge monster, looks at him and says, right, you're my supper now. And the king tries to bargain with him, and he says, look, I'll give you this deer. And the ogre says, well, the deer's in the shade of a tree as well, so it's mine, actually. So I'll take the deer and I'll eat you. So then the king says, okay, no, wait, I'm very powerful. I'm a king. I can make sure that I'll bring you food every day. I can make sure that someone comes every day that we get you food. How does this bargaining go? Oh yeah, so instead he strikes this deal. He strikes a deal with the ogre that every day he'll send another man to be eaten. He'll send a man to be eaten. The king's quite selfish. He doesn't come off well in the story, I'm afraid. He'll send a man with a pot of rice. I think the rice is like a side dish. He'll send a man and a pot of rice. Maybe the ogre was like, what am I going to eat them with? He said, rice. So that's the deal. So he comes back and he says, if I'm the king of Alavi, and if a man doesn't come, the day I don't send someone, you can eat me. So that's the deal. So he goes back and he tells his ministers of what's happened. And the ministers think, okay, what we'll do is we'll go to the prisons, and all of the people who have been sentenced to death, we'll send them to the tree with a pot of rice, and we'll send them every day. And so the ministers go to the jails and they say to all these people who are sentenced to death already, who wants to be free? Who wants to be released? And all you have to do is take this pot of rice and go to this tree. So the ministers do that, so they start doing that. So the first person goes, and then the ogre comes down and gobbles him up. Apparently it says it bites him like biting the stem of a plant. It's a big ogre. And he eats the person and I guess the rice as well for a balanced meal. But the ministers and the guards who accompany the men to their doom see this happening and see the ogre eating them, and they tell their loved ones of the fear of what they've seen, and soon word spreads that the king feeds convicts and criminals to ogres. So what happens is people stop committing crimes because there's this fear that they're going to be eaten by ogres. So it's a lot of backstory to this. When you say it, it's actually quite long. So people stop committing crimes, and soon enough they run out. The jails run out. They run out of people in the prisons. And so what the king's ministers do is start putting the king's gold around in the streets and start waiting for people to touch it. And they can arrest them. But everyone's so scared that they don't do that. So what they decide is they need to send more, because otherwise the king's going to get eaten. And so they said, why doesn't everyone send an elder from each family we have to take one elder. And they said, and I don't quite understand the reasoning around this, but they say, well, no, because the people will just think that it's too cruel. They've sent away so and so, or the elders will start to get fear because they'll know that it's starting to happen, and it will spread. So instead, each family will have to give a newborn, one of their infants, and offer up an infant. So that's what happens. The ministers start to go around to take infants to take to the ogre to be eaten. But soon the mothers, of course, all send their children away to grow up in other towns and cities, and then they can come back when they've grown up. So the city is run out of children, apart from one, who's the king's son. And so the king says, rather than have him be eaten, take my son. And so the king offers up his son, or gives him to his ministers to take to the ogre. Okay, cut to another scene. That's end of episode 1. You cut to another scene, and the Buddha is wandering around, and he can sort of see this is happening. And the Buddha arrives at the ogre's mansion. So apparently it's well known that ogres have invisible mansions. I didn't know that, but the Buddha can see the mansion, and so he goes up to the mansion, and the ogre is away on an ogre conference. Is how it's translated. He is away on an ogre conference. Okay, they're talking eating people. They're talking, I don't know, mansions, recipes. So you get the rice. He's saying like, you get the rice, and so he's at this ogre conference. So the Buddha goes in and knocks on the door, and the Buddha sort of is, so I don't know, they're sort of creatures. This creature comes and opens the door, and the Buddha says, "Oh, can I come in?" And say, "Oh, well, the ogre will be really unhappy if you come in." He says, "Oh, I don't mind. That's fine." So, "No, I really don't think you should come in." So, "Well, if there's not any bother, I don't mind, so I'll come in." So the Buddha comes in, and the Buddha sits on the ogre's throne, and which apparently is a big no-no. He sits on the ogre's throne, and all the creatures in the mansion start gathering around, and the Buddha starts just teaching meditation, starts teaching the Dharma to all the creatures in the mansion. You know, these devas, which are sort of like almost like angel figures in sort of Buddhist mythology and things, who are in the mansion, think the ogre is not going to be happy with this. And they fly over or appear at his ogre conference and say, "By the way, there's this monk has come into your mansion, and what's more is he's sat in your throne, and he's actually teaching everyone the Dharma and teaching them how to meditate." And the ogre roars, and he's just like livid, and he's full of hatred, and he goes back to destroy this monk who is gone into his mansion. And so he, are you all engaged? It's a good story, isn't it? It's a good story. And so he goes back to the mansion, and he has 4 great weapons. I think one of them some sort of club, maybe some sort of axe or something. It's these 4 great legendary mythical weapons which are strong enough to cut down mountains or something. So a very long description about each weapon in the text, and but every time he goes to attack the Buddha with each weapon, they just descend into flowers and break down around him and have no effect. None of his anger and aggression has any effect on the Buddha. And so he spends there's a long period in the text of him attacking the Buddha, and he does all of this or does all of this, and all these great weapons which the Buddha destroys, and then the ogre just screams at him, "Get out!" And the Buddha goes, "Okay." And so the Buddha leaves, and he goes, "What?" And he goes, "Well, it's fair enough. It's your mansion. I just came in uninvited. I'll just go." And so he goes out, and then the ogre thinks, is he going out because I've scared him, or out of his anger, or is he really? And he says, "Wait, come back." And he goes, "Okay." And he comes back in, and he's like, "No, actually go out again." He says, "Okay, I'll go out again. I'll go out again." And then the ogre says, so he does this a bit, and then he thinks, actually, look, he's very sort of, I've weakened him and made him docile with my attacks. So I'm just going to keep weakening him. And then eventually, what I'll do is I'll grab him by his legs and throw him across the river. That's what the ogre's plan is. Grab him by the legs and throw him across the river. And so he says, "Go out," and then come back in again. "Go out." No, come back in again. And the Buddha says, okay. And then on the 4th time of doing that, the Buddha sees the ogre's plan, sort of reads his mind, and says, "No, I know what you've got planned, and I'm not going to go out." And so then the ogre thinks, right, well, I can't destroy him by force, but there's another way that ogres can destroy their enemies, which is by making them mad. And it says, make them mad and burst their hearts. And so the ogre's parents have taught him 8 questions, which are sort of unanswerable and will drive any being mad. These 8 questions. And these questions will give it sort of goes back in the mythology to the last Buddha, Kassapa, or actually not last, but a different Buddha, who teaches this ogre's ancestors these 8 questions. And he says, these are the 8 questions that only a Buddha can, or an enlightened being can answer. And so they've gone down and he teaches them the questions and the answers. And they've been passed down and learnt as a way of making people mad and bursting their hearts, is what it says. It's not a very nice story. Anyway, so he asks these 8 questions, and the Buddha answers them, and he answers each of them. And as he's answering them, he's teaching the ogre the Dharma. And when the ogre's questions are answered, he realizes this is the Buddha. This is an enlightened being. And suddenly, he has, suddenly he feels ashamed and wants to sort of practice. He sort of converts the ogre to the Dharma and practicing the Dharma. And he says, I'm so sorry. And, I didn't realize you were this enlightened being. I didn't realize you were the Buddha. And so in that questioning, the Buddha, converts the ogre to practicing the Dharma. Okay, and then at this point, there's a knock at the door. There's a big mansion door, and it's the ministers of the king who have come with the king's son. And they come and they give the son to the ogre, and they say, "Here's this." And the Buddha says, "What's going on here? What's going on here?" And the ogre says, "Oh, I don't." It doesn't want to, and just, the Buddha knows that the ogre's been eating all these people. But the ogre feels embarrassed and ashamed, and he gives him to the Buddha and says, you have him. And then the Buddha has him, and then goes back to the ministers and says, I think this belongs to you. And as he gives him that, he blesses the child and gives him the name Hataka, because he's been handed down. He was handed from the ministers to the ogre, from the ogre to the Buddha, and then back to the ministers and back to the king. And that is why Hataka was called hand-me-down. Okay. That's the story of Hataka. All right, let's right, I hope you enjoyed that fairy story. But let's just finish by just sitting. We're just going to sit for less than 5 minutes, just a little bit, just to. You're not doing anything particular, just letting sitting with your experience and letting this sort of evening absorb. Now let's really put the lights down. That's all right. Just sit for a little while. So just sitting with a broad awareness. Just letting the evening sink in and absorb. Right, so that's the end of the evening. So if you could help by just putting your mats and cushions away at the back. Good luck if you're still on the meditation challenge. There's a few days left, isn't it? And see you all next time.